All right, let's talk about one of the most incredible and sometimes baffling systems in the entire human body, the immune system. We think of it as this amazing army, right? Constantly on guard, protecting us from everything out there. But what happens when that army gets its signals crossed?
And that's really the big question we're tackling today. Because when that defender turns on you, well, that's when you get things like allergies, autoimmune diseases, and even immunodeficiencies. And for all of you heading into the clinic, getting a handle on this delicate balance is, it's absolutely essential. So let's start at the beginning. Let's meet the troops.
Okay, so first up, meet your immune army. Before we get into the problems, we've got to understand how things are supposed to work, right? Think of it like a super sophisticated military, with all these different branches working together.
So your immune army basically has two main divisions. First, there's the innate system. This is your front line, your first responders. They're super fast. We're talking minutes to hours, but they're not very specific. They kind of just attack anything that looks foreign. Then you've got the adaptive system. Now these guys are the special forces. They're slower to get going, it can take days or weeks, but they are incredibly precise. They learn to recognize a specific enemy, and this is the really cool part. They remember it. So if that same bug ever shows up again, the response is way faster and much, much stronger.
Now, take a look at this. It's actually kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Every single cell in this massive, complex army, all of them, come from one single place, the bone marrow. This whole process is called hemopoiesis. You start with this one type of stem cell, and it differentiates into every specialized soldier you need. It's like the ultimate military academy.
All right, let's meet a few of the star players, the key soldiers on the battlefield. You've got your neutrophils. These are the infantry, the first ones to swarm the scene of an infection. They actually make up most of your white blood cells. Then there are macrophages. I like to call them the heavy-duty cleanup crew. Their job is to literally eat up the bad guys and all the leftover debris. And then, in that adaptive army we just talked about, you've got the B cells. They're the weapons factories, churning out antibodies. And finally, the T cells. These are the generals, the field commanders telling everyone else what to do and directing the whole attack.
And check this out. This is just how incredibly powerful these cells can be. When a neutrophil gets totally overwhelmed by a massive infection, it can do something wild. It literally explodes, spewing out its own DNA to create these sticky, deadly nets. We call them neutrophil extracellular traps, or nets for short. And these nets physically trap and kill the pathogens, stopping them in their tracks. It's an amazing last-ditch defense for sure, but it also gives you a little hint of the damage this system can do if it's not kept in check.
Which is the perfect lead-in to our next section, friendly fire. So, what happens when this incredibly powerful system goes into overdrive and starts attacking things it shouldn't?
Well, one thing that happens is what we call hypersensitivity. You probably know it by a much more common name, an allergy. This is basically your immune system completely overreacting to something that's totally harmless, like pollen or dust mites. It mistakes that harmless molecule for a deadly threat and launches an all-out war, which, as you probably know, can make you feel pretty miserable. And I promise you, you are going to hear this exact line a million times in your career. This quote is from a case study. A 27-year-old guy comes in complaining about his sinuses. He's got a stuffy nose, he's sneezing, the works. He probably thinks he has a cold, right? But that key phrase, "this happens every year at this time," that's your giant clue. That's not a random infection, that's classic allergic rhinitis, a textbook type 1 hypersensitivity.
Okay, so allergies are one type of overreaction, but then there's autoimmunity, which is when the system starts attacking the body itself. In this diagram here, it lays out the blueprint for how this self-destruction happens. It usually starts with someone having a genetic predisposition, a susceptibility. Then something from the environment comes along, maybe a virus, some kind of trigger, and it just flips a switch. The body starts making what we call autoantibodies, which are antibodies that mistake your own cells for the enemy. And from there, it's a downward spiral of inflammation and eventually real tissue damage.
So, an overactive immune system is a huge problem, but what about the flip side? What happens when the defenses are down and the system is underactive?
That state is called immunodeficiency, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The immune system is deficient, it's compromised, the army is too weak to fight effectively. This leaves a person incredibly vulnerable. They can get sick from germs that a healthy person would fight off without even noticing. And this can be primary, meaning you're born with it because of a genetic issue, or it can be secondary, where something else, like an infection, causes it.
And just to give you a sense of the scale here, look at this number, 38.4 million. That's how many people were estimated to be living with HIV across the globe in 2021. HIV is the most common cause of secondary immunodeficiency in the world, and it is just a devastating real-world example of what happens when the body's defenses are taken offline.
Okay, so let's bring all of this science back to the clinic. This section is all about the clinical connection. What does this stuff actually look like when a patient walks through your door?
These are the kinds of physical exam clues you need to be looking for. So for allergic rhinitis, you'll look inside the nose and see these boggy, swollen, kind of bluish-looking turbinates. For rheumatoid arthritis, you're looking for joints that aren't just swollen but also warm to the touch. With atopic dermatitis, what most people call eczema, you're looking for that classic red, bumpy, scaly rash. And see that cobblestoning in the throat? That bumpy appearance on the back wall? That's a huge telltale sign of the chronic irritation you get from postnasal drip with allergen.
And of course, your physical exam findings are going to guide your lab work. A basic CBC with a differential is your starting point. A high white count or leukocytosis can point you towards an acute infection. Then you have things like CRP and ESR. Now, these are non-specific. They don't tell you where the fire is, but they scream that there is a fire somewhere, that there's inflammation happening. And then to really nail down an autoimmune diagnosis like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, you're going to order tests for specific autoantibodies. These look for those IgG or IgM antibodies that are attacking the body's own tissues.
Which really brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? The immune system is all about balance. It's a tightrope walk between being aggressive enough to kill invaders, but tolerant enough to leave our own body alone. With autoimmune diseases on the rise and new pathogens always emerging, the great challenge for your generation of clinicians is this. How can we learn to be better conductors of this orchestra? How do we fine-tune this system, boosting it when it's failing and calming it down when it's in overdrive, without messing things up even more? That's the puzzle that's going to define a lot of medicine for years to come.